I almost threw it away without looking. A crumpled cafe receipt, stained with coffee, lying in the trash like it meant nothing. But then I saw the words written across it. Meet me before I die. No name, no date, no explanation. I had no idea who wrote it or why it ended up in my hands, but picking it up would change my life forever. Because that receipt wasn't just a message, it was a countdown. And the girl who left it wasn't looking to be saved, she was looking to be seen. The receipt fluttered out of the trash like a dying bird, its thin paper catching the cafe's warm air and landing at my feet as if it had chosen me. On it, smeared by coffee and a trembling hand, were 6 words that knocked the breath out of my chest and rearranged the room around me. Meet me before I die. In that instant, the clatter of cups fell away, the smell of burnt espresso sharpened, and my ordinary life cracked open, exposing a quiet truth I had been avoiding for years. Sometimes fate doesn't knock politely. Sometimes it throws itself at your feet and dares you to pick it up. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this live because people like you choose to believe that small moments can change everything. I had come to the cafe to disappear. It was the kind of place where people hid in plain sight, tucked behind laptops and notebooks, pretending to be productive while nursing old disappointments. I had lost my job the month before and was slowly losing my father to a disease that turned memory into fog. My days felt like long corridors with no doors. I ordered the cheapest coffee, sat by the window, and watched rain thread silver lines down the glass. Across the room, a girl sat alone at a small table, her hands wrapped around a mug she never lifted. There was a gravity to her stillness, as if she were holding the room together by refusing to move. When she stood to leave, she moved with careful intention, leaving behind the receipt like an afterthought, or maybe like a seed. I stared at the paper for a long time before picking it up. The words were not printed, they were written, urgent and uneven. There was no name, no time, no place. The barista cleared the table without noticing the note had vanished into my pocket. I told myself it was a joke, a dare, an art project, anything but what it felt like. Still, that night I couldn't sleep. The words pulsed behind my eyes, a countdown without numbers. I thought of the girl's stillness, of the way she had looked through the window as if searching for a version of herself already gone. The next morning, I went back to the cafe. It felt ridiculous and necessary at the same time. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets washed and bright. I sat in the same spot, ordered the same coffee, and waited. Hours passed, and the room filled and emptied with lives brushing past mine. I almost left when she walked in, thinner than I remembered, her hair pulled back with a care that suggested effort rather than vanity. She sat at the same table. I watched her hands shake as she reached for her mug. I told myself that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to move anyway, and I moved. We didn't speak. There was no dramatic recognition, no cinematic exchange of words. She looked at the receipt in my hand, nodded once, and smiled with an expression that carried both relief and apology. We shared the quiet like a promise. She stood, and I followed. Outside, the city hummed with its indifferent energy, cars passing, people hurrying, the world continuing as it always does when someone is quietly falling apart. Her name was something soft and old-fashioned, the kind that sounded like a song remembered from childhood. She told me, without telling me, that time had become a narrow bridge for her. A diagnosis had carved her future into a small, sharp shape. She had been leaving messages around the city like breadcrumbs, hoping someone would notice, hoping someone would care enough to follow. Not to save her, she made clear through her eyes and the careful way she breathed, but to witness her, to see her as she was, not as what she was losing. We began to meet every morning at the cafe. It became our quiet ritual, an anchor in days that otherwise threatened to drift apart. We talked without speaking, communicated in the shared language of attention. I noticed how she watched light move across tabletops, how she counted her steps, how she held joy like something fragile but real. She noticed how I flinched when my phone buzzed with updates from the hospital, how I avoided the future by pretending not to care. In her presence, my life slowed down enough for me to see it. The challenges were not dramatic in the way stories often promise. There were no miraculous recoveries, no sudden reversals. There was only the steady work of showing up, of choosing to be present when presence felt heavy. I struggled with the selfishness of my hope, with the urge to believe that caring might somehow bargain with fate. I struggled with the guilt of wanting more time when time was the one thing she did not have. She struggled with pain that arrived unannounced, with nights that refused to end, with the grief of leaving a world she had only just begun to truly notice. Things began to change in small, almost invisible ways. I started walking my father through the park instead of watching television with him, letting him tell the same stories again and again as if they were new. I started writing in the mornings, not to escape my life, but to record it. She started smiling more, not because she felt better, but because she felt seen. The cafe staff began to recognize us, offering refills we hadn't asked for, letting us linger without pressure. Kindness, I learned, often arrives quietly and leaves no receipt. Suspense crept in like a shadow lengthening at dusk. There were mornings she didn't come, and I sat alone with my coffee cooling, my heart racing with questions I was afraid to ask. When she returned, paler, moving slower, the relief hurt almost as much as the fear. I began to understand that loving someone on borrowed time means learning to live inside uncertainty. Every moment becomes both gift and goodbye. The city changed seasons around us, leaves turning, holidays arriving without ceremony, the world marking time as hers unraveled. One morning, she placed a small notebook on the table between us. Inside were sketches of the cafe, of the street outside, of people caught mid-gesture. There were lists of things she loved, and things she was afraid of, and things she hoped someone would remember. I realized then that the receipt was never an invitation to meet her before she died. It was an invitation to meet her before I forgot how to live. She was teaching me with quiet insistence that meaning is not found in longevity, but in attention.
The end did not arrive with a trumpet blast. It arrived like a fog, soft and disorienting. The mornings grew fewer, the notebook grew thicker. On our last day at the cafe, the light was gentle, the air cool. She sat for a long time without moving, as if committing the room to memory. When she left, she did not leave a receipt behind. She left the chair warm and the table clean. I walked home alone, carrying the weight of gratitude and grief in equal measure. Weeks later, I returned to the cafe and ordered my coffee. The barista slid the cup toward me with a look that suggested recognition. Under the saucer, there was a folded piece of paper. It wasn't a receipt. It was a note, written in the same uneven hand, thanking me for meeting her where she was, thanking me for seeing her, thanking me for learning how to look. Life did not become easier after that. My father's memory continued to fade. Work remained uncertain. Loss did not transform into a neat lesson with a bow. But something inside me had shifted. I noticed people more. I slowed down. I left notes for strangers, small kindnesses without expectation. I understood that we are all writing messages to one another, hoping someone will read them in time. If this story has begun to stir something in you, hold on to that feeling. Let it guide you toward the people and moments you've been meaning to notice. Before the ending, please leave a comment telling us what kindness means to you, or who you would meet if time were suddenly precious. Near the end of her notebook, there was a final page with a single sentence written carefully,
as if the words themselves mattered more than the hand that formed them. It said that dying teaches you how to live if you are brave enough to pay attention. I closed the notebook and sat by the cafe window, watching the world pass by. The rain returned, gentle and forgiving, and I felt, for the first time in a long while, that I was exactly where I needed to be. If this story has touched your heart, please like, share, and engage with the video. Your support keeps stories like this alive, reminding others that even the smallest moments can change a life.